So I just wanted to start by thanking Kathy so much for this opportunity and also thanking my mom for helping me prepare. With All Saints' Day approaching, I wanted to talk about what it means to be a saint. Sainthood always seemed like the end goal for me when I was a little kid. Saints always seemed so perfect, and you almost end up idolizing them because the church rarely emphasizes that they're human too. In my quest to attain that frankly unattainable ideal, I'd say rosaries, memorize new prayers, try and fail to learn Latin, ask my favorite saints for their advice, and attempt to do nice stuff like setting the table without expecting a reward. The only problem with my selflessness was that I'd always make a note of it and be like, oh yeah, mom might not have seen that, but Jesus sure did. I even almost tried to pay attention during Mass, so you can see how committed I was. But what does it actually mean to be a saint? I think about this question in the context of my all-time favorite historical figure. He's not only my favorite historical figure because he was also the third of 10 kids, like someone else I know, but because I think he really embodied Jesus' message. This man's name was Thomas Sankara. Here's a picture I painted of him. He was born on December 21st, 1949 in the West African country of Burkina Faso. He was raised Roman Catholic and everyone thought he would become a priest until he joined the military. In 1983, he was appointed as the prime minister. However, he disagreed with the sitting regime and was placed under house arrest. This was very unpopular among young military officers, and they led a coup on his behalf, overthrowing the government. At the age of 33, Thomas Sankara became the president and launched an unprecedented series of reforms. He actually renamed the country, which used to be the Republic of Upper Volta, to Burkina Faso, which means Land of the Upright People. His domestic policies included famine prevention, land reform, a literacy campaign, and other health and agrarian programs. He distributed millions of doses of vaccines to children across Burkina Faso and planted 10 million trees to combat desertification. He was also a champion for women's rights, prohibiting female circumcision, forced marriages, and polygamy. He did all that in 4 years because on October 15th, 1987, when he was 37 years old, he was assassinated in a military coup that was possibly backed by the French, who wanted to regain control of the Ivory Coast. Looking at his life's work, I think he died for Jesus and Jesus' message of love and equality as much as any martyr. He definitely had his flaws. For example, Amnesty International has criticized his government for arbitrary detention of his political opponents. But as Jesus says in the Gospel, no one is good but God alone. I don't think he means that we are all bad. I think that he means that we are human and therefore complex. My mom cites that Solzhenitsyn passage when she talks with us about avoiding rationalizations and being honest with ourselves. This need for honesty is why Jesus praises the tax collector and condemns the Pharisee. The tax collector is honest with himself. He recognizes the evil that coexists within the good in his heart, and his humility redeems him. Thomas Sankara was not perfect, but he sincerely attempted to embody Jesus' command to love one another. Although he was Roman Catholic, his ideals were very different from the institutional church, which has been corrupted by sexism, racism, classism, and colonization for centuries. I sincerely doubt the church would ever even consider mentioning Thomas Sankara, but I think he's pretty close to what we're actually supposed to be. He destroyed power hierarchies even if they benefited him, like with his work for women's rights and for the poor. He voluntarily embraced personal poverty, using his power as president to lower his own salary drastically, and he refused to have air conditioning in his office because almost no other people in his country had it. He also forbade government chauffeurs and first-class airline tickets for public servants, including himself. When he was asked why he didn't want his portrait hung in public places, like other African leaders at the time, he responded, "There are 7 million Thomas Sankaras." He emanated a deep humility and radical love. He wasn't afraid to cause temporary discomfort to make the world a better place. Thomas Sankara also demonstrates the rejection of the sin that I consider to be the most deadly, greed. Many people display a constant desire to get more and to let go of none of it. The first reading emphasizes the need to avoid greed. Give to God as God has given to you, generously and according to your means. I don't think we should live miserably here on earth in anticipation of whatever's coming after this. But there's no reason to accumulate wealth you'll never use while others starve and die. The gospel recognizes that it is hard for the rich to give up what they have, but if they are unwilling to part with their material wealth, their greed will block them from choosing love. I don't even want to say it'll block them from the kingdom of heaven, because I don't think that should be the focus. If we all actually loved each other and escaped our greed, we could have heaven here on earth. My sisters and I talk a lot about religion and how weird the institutional church is for us at this point, for one main reason. It all seems so overcomplicated. The emphasis seems to have shifted very far away from what Jesus actually told us to do, to love God and to love one another. I'm not saying the other things are necessarily bad. If rosaries and fasting and confession help you to love God and other people, that's great. But I think too often we do these things more out of obligation. If that's the case, then what's the point? Rules should serve the people, and whenever they get in the way of loving others, the people should always come before them. Humans are complex. Jesus' message is not. The institutional church has made Jesus' message impossibly complicated and has reduced the human to a simple binary of sinner and saint. Solzhenitsyn observed correctly that when we divide the world into good guys and bad guys, legals and illegals, saints and sinners, we end up using systematic arguments to justify all sorts of violence. Pope Leo wrote in his recent exhortation that the number of people living in poverty, quote, poverty should constantly weigh upon our consciences, unquote, and that, quote, there is no shortage of theories attempting to justify the present state of affairs or to explain that economic thinking requires us to wait for invisible market forces to resolve everything, unquote. We are all capable of rationalizing evil in order to define ourselves and our group as good. Humans do not divide into a binary of good and bad. Actions are good or evil, and we are each capable of both. As the psalm reminds us, keep your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking lies. Turn from evil and do good. We should keep the example of Christ's love before us to help avoid rationalizations of harm. Pope Leo wrote that, quote, love is above all a way of looking at life and a way of living it. A church that sets no limits to love, that knows no enemies to fight but only men and women to love, is the church that the world needs today. But I'm not sure that the institutional church is the church that he's describing here. The extreme emphasis on the real presence of Christ in the tabernacle has the effect of creating another false binary. We are wanted to believe that Jesus is in here, not out there. Our access to him requires a priest. However, there's a lot less emphasis on the whatever you did for the least of one of these, you did for me. Jesus isn't locked away in the tabernacle. He's within every single person we meet. We don't need to go to Mass every day to see Jesus. We just need to look at the people around us. What's the point of venerating the Eucharist if you don't venerate your family, your friends, any person, even if you'll never see them again? They're just as completely Jesus as the host in the tabernacle. So I think the easiest way to become a saint is just to shift our emphasis. It's not about what a deed is, it's about why it is. God is love. Everything that we do lovingly is good. It's a lot simpler than we're taught in the institutional church. The Pharisee and the rich man in the gospel might give money and fast, following all the laws, but that's all empty if it's not backed up with real action, and that real individual action is what makes for a saint, regardless of any pretense or of perfection or the rules of canonization. Thanks again, Kathy.